And I'm very interested to see how things pan out now because our first set, Cthulhu, as expected, still kind of being a top priority. But Olorun, surprisingly enough, was being top 2 by the Kings in the first 3 games and then banned away in game number 4.
We'll get to see where I was going to say priority for both of those come through because the Cthulhu was big. The Titans were running it with or without the Morrigan, but a lot of with in that combination.
Yeah.
And the Morrigan is a good pick for the Titans, period. So it makes sense for that. And actually for Vin as well. They have a lot of overlapping god pools, I'm starting to realize, between the Bolts and the Titans. Very similar
really
styles of play in both their mid laners, their solo laners. And it's wild to think about it because you look at the Titans, and they've got some insane veterans on this team. I mean, that's pretty much everything, save for layers, has played this game for years and very successfully at that. The Bolts have a lot of similarities, but, this is Jake's second year. He's almost completed 2 years in the SPL. Haddix, this is his rookie year. It's easy to forget because he's on a top team like the Bolts. And so it is really interesting to see how much he overlaps with Benji, and I think that is going to be a very important lane. And for both of the junglers, that is going to be a very important place to try and either leverage for themselves or to at least slow down the other team.
Yeah, that's one thing that a lot of, obviously this is the top level play. Everybody's got a very strong god pool at their arsenal. You do see a lot of overlap, but there are some individual players who have kind of those pocket picks that other teams are starting to emulate a little bit more now that they're recognizing, hey, this is kind of a meta pick. Things like the set ADC that, Cyclone's been. Now, it's not the first time that set ADC has been a thing. This happened a couple of seasons back. But Cyclone, the first one to kind of bring it back here, and we've seen other teams, namely, I think Panicat over on the Jade Dragons, has tried to emulate this himself, and maybe not to the most success, but at least similar levels of success. We even saw it down in the Challenger Circuit playoffs that happened this last weekend, where Set was becoming a top pick in multiple roles outside of the jungle. I'm talking not just the ADC. We even saw some picks up here in mid, but first bans have come out. It's Geb, Morrigan, Camazotz banned away by the Bolts. Odin, Yamoja, Cthulhu by the Tartarus Titans. That leaves up a ton of frontline, which has been one of the heaviest priorities that we've seen in a while here at the Pro League. Terra, Nike, and Sylvanas, all frontlines picked up for the first 3.
And honestly, Terra, it's interesting to see the Bolts go for it. It was very similar to what the Leviathans were doing in set number 1. Going for this first pick, Terra. Her ult is really good. Her control's really good. Admittedly, her damage can be really good in the middle of a fight as well. If you manage to get the dash off with the collapsing wall, you can have a lot of burst, plus still CC that she's able to provide. All of it's pretty interesting, but it worries me a little bit because she has to provide. When I look at the first pick, it almost needs to be overwhelmingly, maybe not overwhelmingly, but still something significant in favor of your team. I think Terra provides a lot, but we'll have to see if Jake is able to make it first pick worthy as opposed to some of the other picks that we've seen. Sylvanas, I think the Kings notably had picked over something like the Terra, and it has been something that only a couple of teams have run, but if the teams that have been running it have looked really good with the Sylvanas even when they lose. And so I think the Titans are going to have a pretty fun game with this.
Okay, so here's something different to tackle alongside this Olorun. Olorun, sure, if it's your first time here in the set today, then yes, Olorun, hey, he's out here. This is now his 4th game that he's going to have played, his 5th time seeing an appearance. He got banned in game number 4 of the last set. But now we have a Soul going right next to him here. Soul we've been seeing a lot in the mid lane. The Nenu specifically is no stranger to this god. Barracuda's played him a couple of times in the past, but we've more often than not seen the Soul go in towards the mid lane. So now we got the double mage ADC coming out of the Bolts, and you already have the Terra. Is this a situation now where you kind of almost accidentally force Haddix to play more of a warrior-centric style god because you don't want to stack up a 4th potential magical, or maybe even throwing Jake on something like a Horus or a Hercules in the support role just so that way you don't stack too much magical damage?
Yeah, I think with Terra, you can almost bet that that's going to be Jake, so it'd probably be a warrior for Haddix, which isn't going to be a big deal. I mean, Haddix has played, especially knowing that you're going up against a Nike. Cthulhu's already been banned. Haddix has loved King Arthur this year, and King Arthur's a pretty good lane bully, can hold his own pretty well. But I think there's a couple of other warriors. I actually like the fact that you bring up Hercules. We don't see him a lot, but he is a bully in the right hands, and I think Haddix is the right hands. So there's like a couple of other flex warriors. Cucullin notably fell off really hard, but still somebody I think that can control a lot of team fights. So the Bolts have a lot of wiggle room for it. Plus, you know that Lasper's probably going to go a physical god. So it's a little more heavy-handed up front for their magical. But I don't think they're as worried about it as they could be, especially because, like you said, Soul has been pretty standard so far for mid lane. I think Barra's going to be just fine and happy having magical crits online. Granted, it'll maybe take a little while, especially with Terra alongside him. That's going to create an opportunity for the Titans to maybe leverage the duo lane early.
Yeah, a couple of small buffs to Oleron and a couple of, I guess, direct nerfs towards the spectral armor has really seemed to have brought this god up into some higher popularity. Now, 5 for 5 on games that this god has appeared, whether it be picked or banned. So something has to be going right in these scrims, or maybe something has been going wrong for some teams and they're trying to take over that for themselves and make sure that they can have a little bit of advantage. Hell was the final pick for the Tartarus Titans before we jumped into the second round of bans to King Arthur, one of the guys you were talking about that Haddix could have gone over towards, because we have this triple magical already lined out for the Bolts, and then a Pele just to kind of throw a little bit of a shot there at Lasbra, take one of his kind of signature picks from. Yeah, he hasn't been playing as much kind of back in the day in the Challenger circuits, where I really saw a lot of that Pele play, but that does get banned away along with Susano and Erlong Shen. And then Charybdis, 1 game played, 100% win rate. The only player who's done it so far has been Zapman over on the Leviathans. It didn't have the most standout of a performance here. But now with all the buffs to Charybdis, do you think that this is maybe a wise little pickup here by the Titans?
Yeah, I think it opened up a lot of opportunities for her to showcase a little more of the kit. Like, initially a lot of the problems are you go stationary when you do decide to fire your ult. And Zap had highlighted it, and we've talked about it a little bit in waiting room and things like that, where for the most part, you go into your 3, that's 3 seconds of damage immunity, CC immunity, you're fine. Then you go into your ult, that's 6 more seconds if you wait the entire duration of CC immunity. And so you're just, hey, I've got 9 seconds that you're going to be focused on me, and that you don't have to worry too much about it. I think all of the buffs she hit make her a little bit stronger in lane, and honestly, early on, like, Oleron has some, good, I want to say, like, movement capabilities to dodge autos, but not like disengage. You're not going to be able to run away super fast from this Charybdis. So I think that that's going to open up a little bit of area for specifically Cyclone to try and leverage.
Thinking about it, Charybdis might actually be a really strong matchup in Oleron just because of the nature of her 3. Drop Sanctified Fields, and I don't believe you're affected by it at all inside that whirlpool.
So 3 teams make it. It feels like between the Warriors and the Scarab, some upsets potentially brewing. Massive, massive advantage for whoever is able to win this first set.
Every single set in Group B carries such a massive amount of weight behind it. Both of these teams are desperate to find a win here. Game 1, as J-Mac alluded to, is not going to be the heaviest stakes. You're kind of figuring out what the opposition's looking for, and as of now, we haven't seen anything too crazy, barring Cyclone Spin going towards this Charybdis. But Cyclone Spin is not a player that's going to sit by the wayside. He's not saying, hey, look, I'll be survivable, you guys win. He must think this god has some merit.
I do have a bone to pick with some of these pros. Aurora whittled down to half HP. Uses the beads and nearly taken down for first blood by Barracuda, and that's exactly where I want to pick up. I did a roundtable discussion. Yeah, maybe. Like, clearly not giving anything away, and now Oleron has been the standout here in day 1.
Maybe. You know what, Dave? I'll go ahead and say they potentially just didn't want to answer the question, sure, but also pros kind of just play the game, right? I mean, I could very well see maybe Barracuda brings out Oleron for the first time in a scrim, pops off, and now everyone in the league is like, this god is sick.
Yeah, you know what's not getting brought out for the first time here? Lasbra level 2 ganking duo lane Charybdis. There's some of that safety, and that lasts so long. All eyes shifted to Aurora, and down he will go. The Olympus Bolts target swap mid-gank, and they'll walk away with first blood as Aurora falls. And I'll agree with you that if nothing else, Barracuda is not behind. In fact, he's a little bit ahead on this Oleron. So you've gotten the initial laning phase a bit out of the way. Cyclone Spin on the Charybdis Myth. After some changes to Hunter items, we wondered how those builds would look. Looks like a little sustain right off the bat. Might need it here if Awesome Jake and Bear are able to connect with some of that damage. Knock up onto Jake, and there is just no chance. Paul rotates in from mid, grabs a return kill here from the Titans, and that is something that Jake is not immune to. Just a bit of an overextension. Purple buff wasn't even there. That's a simple rotation in from Paul.
No matter what. If they're getting blown out of the water in the early game, they're going to buckle down and sit in their Phoenix for as long as it takes. And I think that comes from a lot of the veteranship that the Olympus Bolts are afforded. Sure, they've got rookie in the league, Haddix, but Barracuda's been playing Smite for as long as just about anybody on the planet. He could very well be account number 6 for all I'm concerned.
Yeah, he just might be. Awesome Jake. I don't know if you call it a gank. Aurora just walked in behind him. That's going to force the escape out of Cyclone Spin as Lasbra has made his way back over to the duo lane. But yet another example of the safety of Charybdis. If nothing else, wastes a little bit of time here from Lasbra. Sticking in that Mace Tree. Jotun's Wrath, first item for both of these junglers. Maybe Layers can get some of that power onto Awesome Jake here. Pull no good from Aurora. Lasbra still sticking around. This would be a 4 versus 4. Venenu's rotated over from mid lane as well. Looks like a quiet purple buff secure from the Titans is all we had our eyes on. And if you kind of get this early look at where all this pressure is going to go, feels like left side is maybe where both these junglers have their eyes.
He will dominate this lobby. So
Right.
a good response from the Chaos team.
Could be worse, though, for the Bolts. You force a bit of a split on that purple buff. Cyclone's been able to get it, but ends up maybe being a bit of a wash here for both teams. Game hovering still right back around even. That early first blood for the Olympus Bolts quickly answered back by the Tartarus Titans just moments later on. Mid lane has been quiet outside of Paul's rotation. This is a sanctified field in lane onto Aurora, who, remember, does not have beads. That's DC immunity thanks to the ultimate. Now he'll just walk on away, but he's going the wrong direction. A couple more auto attacks. That's all the Bolts need, but they will not stick around. Instead, Layers is going to rotate in here to duo. Awesome Jake takes a little bit of poke damage from the Loki, but Ven and Laz are here as well. And somehow everyone remains on the map.
Barracuda misses that first ability and loses out on the kill entirely for it. Aurora with great jukes does head the wrong direction away from his own tower, but that's to avoid the second ability's damage.
And it's Lotus Crown for Paul, and it'll be the Heart Ward instead for Aurora. But you got two big sources of healing here for the Tartarus Titans. The Olympus Bolts have to prioritize that anti-heal a little bit heavier. And so an early Brawler's Beat Stick plus a Pestilence maybe for the moment feels like enough, Myth, but as the game goes on, you might need something a little bit more if you're the Olympus Bolts. Gold Fury started up, but this time the Titans are here. Watch out for Benji. He's in the mid lane right now. He'll be behind the Olympus Bolts if this fight continues on. Gold Fury low. Gold Fury kind of soft reset here. Sanctified field out onto Aurora, and they have not gotten the kill. Lasbra able to turn it around immediately, though. Benji is around behind the Bolts. He will leap on out, and 1 for none go the Bolts.
A good ult from Cyclone Spin to find a couple of stuns on the tail end, but not enough to turn that fight around. The Tartarus Titans, though, they stick around.
Lots of CC onto Benji. Lots of damage there as well. Gold Fury still stands strong mid, pulsing out the heal to the rest of the Bolts. That's a big tremble out from Haddix. Catches out onto the backliners of the Tartarus Titans, who are grouped up with one another here. But there's enough cleave damage from the Titans onto the Bolts that'll get those health bars, almost all of them, right down around half HP. Jake, the main source of healing here, is going to force the Bolts away, and is the health advantage, despite a numbers disadvantage, enough for the Titans to pull this Fury.
It's dropped down to 50%. Paul creating a lot of space here. Olympus Bolts finally starting to work their way forward.
It's reset again.
Is reset, but the numbers disadvantage reset as well. Roar rejoining his team.
That's right, he's back in the fight. The ultimate advantage for the Tartarus Titans for the time being. Ven, Jake, Barra, Haddix, they're all waiting for theirs, where the Titans have 3 ready to go. Gold Fury taken down by the Olympus Bolts. It will be reset no further, and the Bolts will finish it off. They will back away as well as the Tartarus Titans surge in as 5. They will find no one on the other end, and a steal away by Awesome Jake makes it worth their while.
But it was not for free. Barracuda at least forced to trade out his beads. Meditation used in that engagement. The Ankh from Haddix as well as the Blink lost out. So the Tartarus Titans may not have taken the objective, but they have taken the dominant positioning on the map. Though they had complete control for so long, it's just one misplay, a coin toss that Jake wins.
Jake giveth and Jake taketh away, doesn't he? He taketh away the Gold Fury from the Tartarus Titans this time.
Ankh probably going to go the way of the Olympus Bolts. Maybe you could make an argument that Layers should be able to win out on some of those fights a little bit later on, but has to go towards Magi's Blessing in his third slot, sacrificing a lot of that early game damage for survivability. Could come back to haunt him.
Can Jake make some magic happen once again? No, not this time. The Tartarus Titans will grab the second Pyromancer of the game for themselves. The staggered out nature of those neutral objectives allow the Titans to group up here on the right. Jake, though, takes the Sentinel of Zeus. Layers ults in. That's Earthen Fury out of Awesome Jake. A couple ultimates spent, but Tartarus Titans seemingly happy with that. You get the Pyromancer and you get a pick on a Jake.
That was a hesitant engagement for the Tartarus Titans.
Right.
Layers really did not want to have to use Assassinate there, but realizing that he is the only one that can find the CC. Yeah, Obshard Tier 2 might be one of the best feeling Tier 2 items you can go for. It is still a phenomenal stat stick, so maybe Ven trying to leverage that early on. Has a lot of damage output. Seems like he's going for a slightly more standard mage playstyle. 2 soul, not really utilizing those auto attacks the same way Barracuda is with some ring selections, but the DPS is certainly there. Oni Fury burning fast.
Oh, this is quick, but so is Awesome Jake. That is a lot of damage from Cyclone Spin as the Oni Fury gets reset. Haddix down. just above half HP. Awesome Jake is going to have to stick back here in this fight, try to sustain himself up. Haddix lets the ultimate fly, and Oni Fury secured by the Olympus Bolts, but the health bars, no chance they're in the Bolts' favor. Leap in by Benji, but Sentinel of Zeus is already down. Piercing Moonlight from Lasbra, as he will walk on away, is still available. Thought he might try to use it for that CC immunity or to go back in. He will do neither, and it's really Sanctified Field from Barracuda that secures the escape, but it's what we saw last time, Nif. The Bolts get the Fury, but you're giving up map pressure.
They might just head straight for the Fire Giant. They've got good damage output. Cyclone Spin lagging slightly behind, but that play from Paul really does tell me that's exactly where they're headed. He goes into the tier 2 tower to delay the backs to create this opportunity. Fire Giant pulled out.
The Bolts know it, though. They are heading to this side of the map. Only Lasbra has his ultimate for the Olympus Bolts going into this fight. All the other ones used to disengage. Awesome Jake, he made magic happen earlier on, has a chance to do so here as well. Tartarus Titans reset on the FG, but the Bolts just going to pick it right back up. Beads used by Aurora. He's got his ultimate in this fight as well. Neither team happy with their odds, and Pyromancer will be the prize for the Tartarus Titans if they choose to stick around.
What a dangerous gambit the Tartarus Titans go for there. The Olympus Bolts decide that they don't really love their odds because of all those team fight ultimates being down, but the Pyromancer, they love their odds here. They pull it out and they shut it down. That one goes to the Bolts with very little fight back from the Tartarus Titans, but you can't just leave the scene completely. You're gonna have to return very soon. Fire Giant is under threat. We're 22 minutes into this game.
And it was the immediate reply, I think, equally impressive from the Bolts. They go back when they're finally able to. They head right to the FG and keep this game as close to even as it's been in a little while. The Tartarus Titans pulled out to a lead earlier on. I think important, the Oni minion waves largely entirely dealt with at this point. This one somehow maybe shrouded in more secrecy. Awesome Jake walks forward once again. Is the steel pressure going to land on the Terra for like the 4th time this matchup? No, because it's going to be reset by the Tartarus Titans. That's in. That's a massive Sentinel of Zeus from Benji on all 5 of the Olympus Bolts. Big knockup from Haddix. Piercing Moonlight back in from Lasbra, and he has found the backline. Sanctified Field will re-engage this fight from Barracuda. The Olympus Bolts dancing inside of that ultimate with one another. We have no casualties in this engagement except for the ultimate meters on the Olympus Bolts. And the Tartarus Titans threaten the Fire Giant once again and force the hand of the Bolts.
But we know how these elongated fights go, despite all that self-sustain on the side of the Bolts, as well as some of the team-wide healing between Jake and Barracuda. Longer fights favor the Titans, and they know it too. Fire Giant down to 50%.
Assassinate could be important here. Maybe the biggest ultimate left on the map. Actives ready for both of the Olympus Bolts carries. They are backing away. Cleave damage out. No good on the ultimate from Cyclone Spin either. And the kite backwards is enough from the Bolts here, but this is a delicate dance. Lasbra's been left alone, and he takes a whole heap of damage, but more poke damage out from layers, as the Bolts will sustain up with this Terra Pillar, but relentless. Or the Tartarus Titans, they will not leave this Fire Giant. It is down beneath half HP yet again. Awesome Jake dashes away 3/4 of the way there on a couple ultimates for the Olympus Bolts. Paul misses with a little bit of the re-engage damage here, and it looks like the Bolts will squeak away.
Aurora, the only one of the Tartarus Titans to have taken any substantial amount of damage. They might as well. Aurora's going to heal you. Paul's going to heal you. Pull it again. Keep the Olympus Bolts on the back foot.
Oh my god, and the Bolts are going to have to stick around. They have to walk their way back into this fight. Haddix has got his ult. Lasbra's got his ult. Ven has got it back as well. Sanctified Fields, that's the one you got to look towards. Barracuda can turn these fights around with a big ultimate out of this Ola run, but the Fire Giant gets reset as the Olympus Bolts get some wind in their sails. Those ultimate meters maybe indicating gas in the tank for the Fire Giant defense. And the Titans will finally allow us to breathe, and they will head away from the Fire Giant. Wave starting to push into the Bolt side of the map. At this point, you just got to assume that they're on the Fire Giant and doing it, and that assumption would have been correct just a moment ago. 3 members of the Titans now show us as spectators but that would be enough damage if left unchecked for a long enough period of time for the Titans to grab that Fire Giant. Aurora is a little low here, but he has some sustain in his kit. Paul does as well, and so not super worried as he approaches back to 100% HP. Olympus Bolts have all of their actives ready to go here for this fight.
Pull!
Ultimate's there as well. Aurora's hit his target with the pull. Sanctified Field out from Barracuda, and the Ola run, the happy feet inside his ultimate. able to deal big damage to Aurora, and Jake is the one who finishes off the kill. The Olympus Bolts remain grouped here, all as one, walking forward, searching for their next target.
Aurora may have landed the phenomenal pull, but all he did was deliver the Sanctified Fields to himself, and a Sylvanas stuck in the center of it is going to die in the center of it, and that's exactly how it goes down. Bolts forward.
Cyclone gets stunned out here, and he will go down into safety, back away from the rest of this fight now. The Bolts are the ones with the power to pull, to reset, to poke and prod the Tartarus Titans and force their hand. But the Bolts do not have any ultimates, neither do the Titans. And this Fire Giant is shrugging, looking around, waiting desperately for someone to fully commit. And he'll have to wait a little bit longer.
This may be the single most damaged Fire Giant in the history of SMITE. This thing has taken a beating in the last 8 minutes that these two teams have been dancing. Aurora, yet again, does respawn to Barracuda. Where are you?
Barra, he's got his Aegis. He does not have beads. He will dance around. He lives for just a little bit longer. That buys enough time for Lasbra to answer back the kill, but Cyclone Spin's got a double in this fight. 3 members of the Bolts are down. Venenu kiting backwards, making his way back from Benji. His Haddix will dash on out as well, and that has got to be enough space to start up this FG.
Trade out layers for 3 members of the Olympus Bolts. I think, yes, sir, for the Tartarus Titans. Ven, though, still hovering nearby, might be able to show some face. That ultimate not quite up. Could, though.
He's going to get spotted out if he goes this direction. The Tartarus Titans will know where he is. His ultimate is here, but Cyclone Spin and Aurora do not stop DPS onto the objective. Venenu poking his head around the corner. This would be a miracle play for the Olympus Bolts. Fire Giant low. Venenu spotted out by Cyclone Spin. He thought that he had pulled one over on the Tartarus Titans, but it's been anything but in and out of the Disapparated and in and out of life. Cyclone Spin on a killing spree. All 3 of the kills in this previous fight, and finally, the Fire Giant will go to the Titans.
And it's not going to go to just 4 members. It can go to all 5. Paul trying to make a hero play around the tier 2 tower, nearly takes out Haddix, but finally the Fire Giant will fall. Tartarus.
But then Benji has been a powerhouse. A 5-man Sentinel of Zeus is what my mind keeps going back to. That helped set up some fights for the Tartarus Titans, and your Phase 2 champions have come to play here in the group stages of Phase 3. It's a 3-2 split for the Tartarus Titans. And Awesome Jake, you thought he was tanky. Cyclone Spin had something else in mind. Awesome Jake is going to have to watch from the sidelines for the next 45 seconds, and so will Lasbra. The Olympus Bolts, they will not even get a chance to put up a real Phoenix defense. The Tartarus Titans, they toy around with the Fire Giant for like 15 minutes here in this game, Miff, and I think you're looking at GG here unless Venenu and Barracuda can get something done. Haddix into the back, but he knocks up no one. The cleanse from Paul is perfectly on point. Pull in from Aurora is there as well, and the Titan will crumble under the pressure of the Tartarus Titans in Game 1. Is all done.
It is the Tartarus Titans in dominant fashion.
There's a lot of, like, an ebb and flow around this Fire Giant that realistically, a majority of it is every time the Bolts have to back off to either sustain or heal up or whatever, the Titans have to go half the distance to do the same, right? And it opens up a lot more opportunities for the Titans to find positions of control and find a way to loop into the fight in a much more favorable position. A lot of this game, up to those points, is as even as possible. I mean, there's 5 kills 27 minutes in. It's going back and forth. The Titans had a really decent amount of control over the gold. It comes down to a good play from Cyclone Spin as well as the rest of the team to really open things up, and then it all starts to fall into their favor. And a lot of it is just because you hit this late game, you get good healing from Sylvanas and Hell, and every time you deal damage to the Bolts, it's slightly more permanent than all of the damage that they are able to deal to you. And after a while, that just gets overwhelming. You're just slightly out of position. You take one misstep, and all of a sudden this Charybdis, who admittedly last time we saw her did not do nearly as well as this time, I think this is a good showcase for what she is capable of, and Cyclone Spin really puts a good spin on this character to showcase how much she can do, which, you know, not top damage in the game, second most just to Benji, but still very, very dominating in that fight.
And a little bit of a different hunter build path than we've been used to seeing. Typically, it's been the Crusher, and then you get Aussie,
who plays her still consistently, and he looks good every time he plays her. But the problem is, David mentioned this at the end of the cast. What are you gonna like? You get rid of Paul's Hell, and good
poison.
luck. Now he has 4 other gods that he can still go to. We haven't seen a whole lot of Raijin though, so maybe that's something that like pumps the brakes. Maybe he has to change to a different style, but. Nothing. Well, actually, that's not true. Raijin got a little bit of a nerf, but like some of these gods, haven't been hit so hard that I'm like, oh yeah, Paul's gonna suffer from his lack of God pull. Like, nah, he's fine. He's more than fine.
Worst case, he just grabs Uller and takes that mid. I mean, that was one of his namesakes when he jumped in the SPL. He has so many gods. It's really just a game of pick your poison against Paul. And it seems that the poison that the Bolts don't want to deal with are this Hell and then the Morrigan that have, as of recent weeks, kind of resurged in Paul's god pool, especially with the Cthulhu being such a popular pick, kind of doubling that up and just having so much frontline presence. The Titans, here in the second game of picks and bans, have taken away the Cthulhu and the Emoja one more time, making sure to get some of those big Guardians off the board. Best of 5 sets, we talked a lot about it in the first set, where first game is kind of just, okay, we're just kind of getting a feel for, what's going on, maybe throw out a couple of new change-ups. We saw the Ola run kind of be like the big one out of everything. That's going to probably be the biggest talking point throughout the entirety of the weekend. It's just the popularity and priority of this Ola run from his buffs and then the Spectral Armor nerfs. But now game 2 is kind of where the teams have to buckle down a little bit, especially the Bolts. Do we go back to that same strategy? Do we find other ways to kind of counteract that strategy? The one answer has been the Hell, and then the Geb also gets banned away here, but I mean, that's nothing kind of out there. I mean, Geb has been pretty much top pick or top ban every single set kind of since his buff.
Yeah, the things that really, the only one that I might shuffle around for the Bolts, and it's this real struggle. I think Venenu's Morrigan is insanely good, and so banning that away, granted, Paul's Morrigan is also insanely good. That's really where the trouble starts, is if you aren't willing to first pick that, you know that they could top 2 it. Last time it was Nike Sylvanas for the Titans, so it's not too surprising to see them still limit, or at least try to limit down some of the collective whole that made the Titans really good. But with Yamoja, the Cthulhu, last time around this was Odin for the Titans, and he's someone that's worth mentioning because he's been banned pretty much every game over the last 4 or 5 weeks of play. But if you give him the opportunity and you let that through, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bolts pick that over the Terra.
And there have been a lot of answers to Odin in the past. You get something like Ardio makes it kind of a hard time for Odin in the laning phase. Now, when you get to later stage team fights, Odin does become very problematic with that cage. But Odin does get let through. Instead, the last ban before we jump into the picks is the Sylvanas that got picked up by Aurora, actually, on the Titans there in that first game. They did get a win with it, but they don't want to give that one away over to the Bolts. That does delete the Terra, which was the top priority out of the Bolts. But Khepri is still up, and Aurora is kind of one of those players who kind of brought this god back in the meta. He was top picking this god for the first couple of weeks of the first half of Phase 3. You think it would be a surprise to really see him kind of just throw that back here in top 2?
Honestly, probably not. I don't know. It's really weird to think about their top 2 for the Titans just because there's so much that...
You never know.
Well, that now has also just been changed for them. I mean, if you do go, and this is actually where the conversation really starts to shine, depending on what the Bolts decided to first pick, which now we know is the Terra, you have to wonder, okay, what replaces the Nike? Odin's going to replace that. What replaces the Sylvanas? This is a team that is not too far-fetched to think about the fact that they could grab, I wasn't even going to say solo laner here or a support. I was going to say straight up, I wouldn't be surprised if they had grabbed a mid laner because they like to save their jungle, they like to save their carry for those bottom 2. So I won't be surprised then if this third pick is for Paul. But the Nike and the Odin is definitely something that has caught me off guard.
We have seen very sparingly Odin supports, and I think Aurora being one of the few players who has done that, but we've seen probably more so Nike jungle when it comes to these two warriors kind of going out of that solo lane, so there is some flex potential between both of them. We'll see where they line out. Camazotz and Ardio on the other side of the board for the Bolts, so they grab the Terra for their support. They have the Ardio now towards the solo lane, and then they get Lazarus something comfortable that's been putting out a ton of damage in the games that he has been able to make it through. Camazotz for him. On the other side of the board, if you get rid of one healer, there's still a couple more out there. Paul going to pick up the Aphrodite for their third pick before they jump in the bans. And then instantly we see another Ola run, this time banned away by the Tartarus Titans.
And you want to talk about a pick that is one not only not coming through too often, but I'm pretty sure has been exclusively a Titans pick. It's this Aphrodite, right? I mean, it's something that they've been running. They've played it 6 times so far this year. He's got 4 wins on it of those 6 games. So he's running a 66% win rate, which is really solid for it. And it pairs so well with both of these picks already. Odin and Nike both like to jump in deep, both have shields and good disengage, but they also have some sort of, well, not necessarily self-sustain, but it's like the shielding that keeps them alive in the deep throes of the enemy. And so, as a frontline goes, you're lacking going a little bit of damage from the mid lane, although birds can still do some. So you're relying a little bit on Cyclone Spin. Worked out well for him in Game 1. but you're also still getting some nuts heals, and with this front line, it's going to be a really difficult wall to get through to shut down not only the healing, but the Charybdis.
Morgan Le Fay, the selection for the Bolts after the second round of bans. The Tiamat did get banned away right next to the YOLO run. And it's so strange to me now, where Tiamat was a god that was being top 3'd, maybe not necessarily a top priority ban anymore, but it was definitely being a god that was picked up at least within the top 3 with so many teams. And now kind of after the changes to her, the changes to Raijin, who's been entirely absent so far in these first 2 sets, we haven't seen Raijin even looked at by a single one of these teams, whether it be a pick or a ban. And now we're starting to see some of these other mages kind of pop out here. The Aphrodite, that's just Paul. Paul's going to do whatever he wants to, but some of these other mid laners have been looking at other picks. The Discordia was one that was banned away earlier on in the day. The Giannis, maybe that was just a big man Tings thing. We want to take Giannis away from him.
Can do. We've also seen what damaging Nikes can do, which is a discussion the desk was having. But it'll end up being the Odin locked into the jungle here for the Titans in game 2.
Yeah, Layers wants to get involved as early as possible, or specifically the Tartarus Titans want their Odin to get involved as early as possible. Gods like Terra, like Morgan Le Fay, even Ardio, going to struggle mightily to deal with that cage early on. So I think that going towards Odin makes perfect sense. You want to be able to utilize it before the Phantom gets picked up by the Olympus Bolts. And Layers is not a stranger to Odin jungle. He's got some roots in the console days, and that was a signature pick of all the junglers on console. We all had our little pocket Odin because it was very easy to execute the
Did
blink
you have to deal with that
cage.
frequently?
No, that was generally me.
Got it.
Because I was very bad. So I just blinked in and I caged.
Hey, look, if that's all you got to do, thumbs up. There's no way you messed that one up, right, Myth?
No,
chance?
a couple times.
Yeah, maybe once or twice. We'll see. Layers not someone I'm betting on messing up that combo all that often here this game. Cyclone Spin running back the Charybdis. Takes the escape at level 2. That'll give you a quick glimpse into the mind of Cyclone Spin here in this lane when you're doing with Jake on Terra, Bear on Iza. Maybe no surprise with the level priority early on. And Barracuda are able to combine. And so a small gold lead early on in this game, a trend that you would like to stop from growing if you're the Tartarus Titans. But the Bolts just fine with the way things have gone. Aurora is here in mid. Stun down onto Jake. Silence is there as well. Do the Dharmic Pillars come out? Do you even need them? Earthen Fury is here. Layers has dropped out the cage, and it's a perfect Dharmic Pillars. Paul is there to grab the kill. And Facilitate isn't all that Paul can do. He'll deal some damage to you as well. And the last kiss won't connect. First blood to the Tartarus Titans.
We saw Cyclone Spin drop to about 30% HP. He kind of has to lock himself in place to
full
channel
HP
that ultimate.
again.
Okay, well, he went back to base, man. But he was full HP when he went back to base initially. Benji, well, he's not full HP. He's taking a fair deal of damage from Haddix.
He is. Haddix very close to full HP. Neither of the solo laners have had much presence on the right-hand side of the map just yet. The Titans are going to get both outside of Venenu making a play, which he will not. The Titans now quietly get both of the neutral objectives on the map. Can you get a tier 1 plus tier 2 plus a kill on a Cyclone Spin? Jake is tanking up the tower, and Charybdis doing Charybdis things beneath the Phoenix, but Lasbro's got the damage. Brawlers beat Stick plus Jotuns, yes please. And tier 1 plus a kill, and most of the tier 2 tower damage going to the Olympus Bolts, but a rotation through here. The angle is there for Layers and Paul. The Titans will not pursue.
They will not. I'm surprised to see that. Maybe the Tartarus Titans, they did not have vision on the Olympus Bolts right there, so concerned maybe with their ability to find that chase. And not the case.
No,
Layers.
he's always on point. No way.
Yeah.
You're not pulling a fast one over onto Awesome Jake, the 408. And finally, we see a grouping between these two teams. Though what I imagine we're awaiting, maybe a bit of poking and prodding. Both teams have decent sustain. So on even footing, maybe in that regard. You mentioned, Myth, a little bit more team-wide for the Bolts, a little bit more direct from the Tartarus Titans. Awesome Jake walks in, but what does he walk into? An Odin cage. He dashes out immediately. Doesn't have to use the Phantom this time, and Layers is thrown down his second cage of the game with middling effect.
And here's the thing about how Izanami slams Ring of Spears. She just does. Just completely destroys it. Haddix, though, finds Aurora. He's taking a lot of damage.
So much CC onto the Ganesh. Paul still has Undying Love, will not get used. Not just yet. Benji around the right side of this fight, separating out the Olympus Bolts from re-engaging onto the rest of his team. The Titans back away after taking a bit of a deep breath here. This is where that single target healing will help out. Aurora somewhat low here, but the team-wide healing feeling better for the Olympus Bolts on the re-engage onto the Primal Fury. Ultimate still down for Layers. Will the gap close be there? Benji is in range. Benji does not have the steal, and the Olympus Bolts grab the Fury. We're all separated out here. All the carries from the Bolts on the left side of this fight, and they have found the backline of the Tartarus Titans. And in one fell swoop, the Bolts find their way forward. Bat out of hell will find the backline of the Tartarus Titans. Venenu's got the first in the fight. It's Layers who goes down, and the Bolts get a big one.
Van gets additional movement speed from landing that third ability. It allows him to close gaps. Psych Float Spin in some trouble.
Ooh, he will be sustained up, though, by Paul, and it looks like the Bolts have gotten all they will be able to get. Fury +1. And I say that's all, but, like, that's huge compared to what we've gotten in the rest of this game. A big spike now for the Olympus Bolts, who are 2K ahead. And it's really the fallout after that we've seen being so important, where neither team has been totally swept around one of these early objectives, but you've given up pressure, and that's what the Tartarus Titans have given up here. Pyromancer pulled by the Olympus Bolts. This will make that loss a little bit heftier, but the Titans steal it away. That's Benji who jumps in. Then the Olympus Bolts will have to settle for splitting the neutral objectives.
So now it's only about 1,000 gold separating these two squads. Olympus Bolts at least benefiting from the passive
Here we go again.
of Primal Fury. They deal more damage to the Fire Giant. They take less. It was about 22 minutes into Game 1 where we saw this dance start around the Fire Giant proper, especially in the hands of as talented a player as Cyclone Spin. Heavenly Sprint's going to do a lot to close up those gaps and make it easier to finish off some of these engagements. Or maybe just go to the Fire Giant and start it now.
Barracuda, big power spike here in this game. Crusher, Aussie, Dominance, Wind Demon. He will shred these objectives quickly. He will shred the front lines of the Titans quickly as well. Dharmic Pillars down. That's a Sentinel of Zeus from Benji, who will jump on away from the backline, or into the backline of this fight. Cyclone Spin channeling his ultimate here. Will not find the target. Venenu backs away from that. Fire Giant still picked up by the Olympus Bolts, and it is low. Cage down from Layers over by where the Pyromancer spawns, and the health bars from the Olympus Bolts middling at best. If the Tartarus Titans can find this opening to re-engage, but the Fire Giant's not been
They got it!
It has been taken away by the Titans on their jump in, and the fight does not look a lot better for the Olympus Bolts. Cyclone Spin just needed some time, and he has found that time. A double kill, plus FG, plus some more for the Tartarus Titans, and this game has been flipped.
Layers bides his time for 23 minutes to find the one bird bomb to steal the objective and set up for his team. And now Lasbra,
right?
he's limping away, is able to avoid the birds this time around. But the Tartarus Titans, Fire Giant on 5 and so much time to play with, they might just take a Phoenix here.
That's right. Those death timers are not short. Awesome Jake 10 seconds away, but 30 on Barra, 20 on Haddix, and all 5 members of the Titans left alive. You are halfway there on a couple of your ultimates as well. You could look Phoenix here. I don't know if I would even call it a roll of the dice, but look at the golden XP. We are nosediving into the Tartarus Titans territory. Awesome Jake is respawned. Haddix still 5 away, 10 on Barracuda. The Titans might be able to fight around this, might be able to get the Phoenix. I imagine they back away after taking down the bird. Yes, they do, and the Titans, massive payoff from a big Fire Giant fight.
You just got to think about how mentally crushing that is for the Olympus Bolts, who had done a great job up until that point in just this one isolated engagement to force out the Tartarus Titans, to put themselves in a position where they can pull it, and then it's just all stripped away right here by this man on the screen right now.
God, it was so low, and he just jumps in, bird bombs it down, and then the rest of the fight, Niff, it wasn't particularly close. I mean, maybe in situations like that, that's where you're thinking, all right, well, the Titans use their cooldowns trying to steal the objective, but it's anything but. And I think another notable big Fire Giant fight performance from Cyclone Spin.
Towers evaporate. It's gone. Tier 2,
yeah,
stripped away.
That fight in mid was not close either. Lasbra has to use Bat Out of Hell to get out of dodge. Felt like he was in hell there in the mid lane as Benji had just totally decimated his health bar. Benji did throw down the Sentinel of Zeus, worth noting there. But with the Bulwark of Hope, you're going to have an extra bit of shielding in that kit as well once the fighting breaks out. So the final tower of the side of the map for the Olympus Bolts goes down here in mid. But now it's awkward. You know, you can sometimes mirror these 1 versus 1 splits, things like that. I'm not sure Lasbra feels comfortable doing that. Look at the play.
They're hunting.
That Layers is going for. Lasbra does not have Bat Out of Hell. That's a stun on to Lasbra from Layers. Is the leap not going to be there? No, it's not. Benji chases him down, and Lasbra falls as well, and Layers blinks over the wall, finds a big fight. Over in the mid lane, Barracuda trapped into the Dharmic Pillars, has to use the Aegis. The bead's there as well, and the left side Phoenix will be the next to go down.
Lasbra knows if he leaps out of that cage, the damage from it gonna do too much.
Yeah,
the chase down from Layers would have shut him down. Aurora, though, takes a lot of damage trying to rotate himself back towards mid, but rejoins his team. He's gonna be healing up shortly.
We are in the last 20 seconds of this Fire Giant buff. Are we in the last 20 seconds of game 2? The Tartarus Titans do not have to deal with Lasbro. They might not have to deal with Venenu. With Barracuda, there's some healing, some sustain on the back end of the fight. Benji gets his ultimate back up in the meantime, slows down the Bolts, which will in turn slow down the Titans, and that'll slow down the end of this game. But 3 Phoenixes down. The right side will be coming back up in the next minute or two.
That's more time that Fire Minions are going to be leaking down the left and center of the map. I think the Olympus Bolts, they find themselves in a very hard position.
Barracuda, that said, in a position, finally, as we've reached late game on this Izanami, to have a big team fight. Second to highest damage in the game, just behind Benji. And so we finally reached that point, Miff, where these late game carries are in the late game for the Olympus Bolts. You're one tier 2 item behind, and we've already mentioned the value of a tier 2 op shard. That's what Paul is ahead of.
Whoa!
That is just way too much. Onto this Morgan Le Fay, as Benji is not worried about the Fire Giant. He is worried about Ven in the right lane. Sentinel of Zeus will drop down. It'll slow down the Olympus Bolts. Haddix re-engages, finds the stun onto Benji, but he is stunned down in turn by the plentiful bounty of CC that the Tartarus Titans have. So Ven and Jake's ults are down here. A couple ultimates used by the Titans as well. Undying Love may be one of the most important. That won't stop the Titans. They're going to push back. The Bolts are going to get this Fire Giant likely for free.
There are 2 cooldowns the Olympus Bolts need to have up if they want to win a team fight.
Number 1.
Awesome Jake's ultimate. Earthen Fury, that's one of your major win conditions right now. The other one being any form of just slow immunity. So you're talking Heavenly Sprint, maybe you're talking about Phantom, the ability to mitigate some of this engage from the Tartarus Titans. And they lost out on one of those as well. Haddix's Heavenly Sprint down for 80. You lost out on Earthen Fury. All you've got left is Phantom. But Layers is not a major threat right now. He's made major plays, stealing Fire Giant, but he's not the one threatening your backline.
No, he's not. Tartarus Titans playing with mid and left Phoenixes down in the base of the Olympus Bolts, and the right side Phoenix looking worse for wear. Little bit of auto attack damage from Cyclone Spin will knock down that Phoenix. Haddix in a 2v1 in the mid lane. Needless to say, he's not feeling too good about that. And that'll send some of the Bolts over towards mid. That'll open up the right side Phoenix to the auto attack damage from Cyclone Spin. And down it goes. So yet again, we fall down to 3 Phoenixes gone for the Olympus Bolts. Left side is going to respawn here shortly. So you might see a shifting of the Titans over towards the left side of the map. But Benji and Layers, they've thrown caution to the wind once or twice. You might just see an engage. You might see the Titans trying to push us onto a game 3 with a 2-0 lead. Layers finds 3 in the backline with the cage. Phantom doing everything, but Barracuda will waltz on back. Some sustain from Awesome Jake keeps Izanami in a comfortable spot. But here come the Titans. Down the mid lane they go. Lots of damage in onto the actual Titan as the Olympus Bolts find some pushback, and the immediate attack is repelled.
Man, all these minions already in the base. Finally, the Titan is reset. Mid Phoenix is spawned, but it's an engage from the Bolts.
Earthen Fury plus Dharmic Pillars. Both supports drop their ultimates. But look whose backline is scattering. It's the Olympus Bolts. And scattered to the wind are Lasbro's hopes of surviving. Haddix, you could say the same for him. Awesome Jake will dash away, but him, Ven, Barra, they're the ones keeping game 2 alive.
You stun!
Double stun from Cyclone Spin, but this game is over. The Tartarus Titans take a 2-0 lead.
The Olympus Bolts were on the edge of being able to find the win in this
what
one.
we've seen out of it in the past has never instilled that much confidence. The minute I saw us load in and that the Odin was in the jungle, I was a lot more concerned for the Titans than I really needed to be. I mean, a lot of these, you had mentioned it at one point, the slow-paced game didn't necessarily have like a lot going for it. I think it was maybe 2,000 gold max that one team ever had over the other. It's this play, not just getting the Fire Giant, although that's huge, but the follow-through afterward, you get a double kill, maybe I think it's a triple kill from Cyclone Spin right here. I mean, that just feels really good to have that big of a turnaround, to shut down the Bolts and strip away the FG. That opens up the door. Otherwise, it's anybody's game, really. It comes down to a steal and a good couple of kills right afterward that make it easy. And then from that point forward, the Bolts were always just a little bit behind. They were always just trailing where the Titans were. And unfortunately for them, that opened up so many opportunities for the Titans to really set things up. I think Cyclone Spin had a really good game. This Charybdis still has a 100% win rate as of right now. And I think the way that they played that was really beautifully executed, even if it did take 22 minutes before they really had a lead.
Similar build path as game number 1 for Cyclone, going for this sustain build starting out and then getting the Executioner kin size and then kind of just ending out with a Deathbringer at the tail end there. I think now is the time where we no longer just say, you know, is Charybdis just a flavor pick, something that Cyclone Spin is just doing just because? I think it's safe to say that we can probably start classifying her as one of the actual hunters to kind of now start picking up, maybe alongside the Izanamis, the Ola runs that have been popping up as of this week, or as of those. But this is where that mental game that we talked about in set number 1, that Dilson and Mifflin talked about right at the end of that last game, where now you have this mountain to climb, the reverse sweep, but you got to take it one game at a time. And the pro players, when we had them in here this past week, one of the things that they talked a lot about was, or at least Twig specifically, he was saying you have to take each game at a time. You have to say, we need to win one game. Not we need to win 3, we need to win 1. And that's the situation that the Bolts are in here. They ban away the Hell, same as in game number 2. And now the Emoji taken away by the Tartarus Titans here. Bolts do have second pick this time around. We do see Odin banned away, this time by the Titans, even though they had success on it in that last game, showing that they maybe now don't want to jump back towards that god, or maybe they have some other things in mind. And the Olympus Bolts, they're tired of the healers, man. They're tired of Paul and Paul's nonsense. They're going to take away the 2 healers that have been giving so many teams so many problems. Aphrodite and Hell both banned away.
And honestly, it makes sense, right? Again, Paul is the only one right now who is playing them the way that they are. I think if you were going up against pretty much any other SPL team, first off, almost any other SPL team, no, you're not going to ban Aphrodite. That is very intrinsically a best-of-5 set versus the Titans. But, the Hell is something that it feels so uniquely them, and you have to choose and pick your poison, right? Titans are the ones that get rid of the Morgan this time. That's been a ban for the Bolts, but it leaves something open, right? You have to ban this Aphrodite, or you want to ban this Aphrodite, and no matter what, that means something high priority has to come through. And unfortunately, it is this powerhouse that has been so potent for the Titans lately in this Cthulhu. And they don't have the combos with it, but they haven't needed it all the time. That's the problem. Cthulhu is just good on their own. It does still have a lot of power picks. Terra, notably, has been the first pick, still available, things like that. So there's a lot of options for the Bolts. Sylvanas as well,
Geb.
Still available. Geb, oh yeah,
Geb.
Completely forget about him. He's supposed to be
I'm
banned.
sitting here shaking the fact that Geb made it through. Cthulhu gets prioritized by the Titans. The Bolts have to pick up Geb here, because if they let Geb go to the Titans, they just gonna run the same compositions that they've been running before. Sure, they're lacking the healing and the sustain that the Aphrodite had, but you still get an obnoxious frontline in Cthulhu, one of the best backline defenders in Geb, and then pick whatever mage you want. But the Bolts don't grab the Geb, who has exceptionally high win rate for the few games that he has gotten through. Instead, they're going to go Tiamat Terra.
And for the most part, at least today, guaranteed 100% ban rate up to this point. He's such a high priority pick, it's actually really surprising to see them glance over him for the Tiamat Terra. That being said, Tiamat and Terra, that's a really good combo to pick up for
those
2.
are great.
That is not a bad 2 to pick up. Good healing from the Terra, as well as good control in the middle of the jungle. Maybe not able to find success in the last 2 games, but that doesn't necessarily warrant the pick being bad as much as it is maybe the way that they're handling things. Although I will say, up against the Cthulhu, I'm going to have a lot to answer for. The Tiamat there, we've seen successful, fallen down as far as mid laners have gone, but still brings a lot of control. Should play a good distraction. The downside I'm seeing is, and Olarun was banned in the second wave of bans last time. I don't think you want him here if you're the Bolts. I see Cthulhu Camazotz. I'm going ahead and saying, all right, you know what? Shuffle him off to the side.
Well, it's not going to be a Geb here for the Tartarus Titans. Instead, they want the Sylvanas and the Camazotz. So forget the soapbox I tried to stand up on just prior to this, and we're going to move on instead towards a third pick Achilles out of the Olympus Bolts. One of the big things about killing Cthulhu is you got to be able to chip away that health bar. Well, you get your Hunter, you get your Tiamat, start slowly whittling it away, and then you have Execute out of the Achilles right at the tail end. It's one of the gods we've seen to try and be an answer to this Cthulhu. It's seen some success in the past. We've also seen Achilles run with Cthulhu, and that is a nightmare to deal with. But instead, we jump into the second round of bans. Soul, banned away by the Bolts. The Tartarus Titans take the Ardio off, because it seems to them they're not quite convinced exactly where this Achilles might be going. We've seen one support game at a PBM to success, and we've seen, I think, one other jungle match, and I think that was Layers, if I'm not mistaken, who picked up that god.
Yeah, it's not something we've been seeing as often lately. And, he still technically has flex potential to the solo lane, but I would put this on Lasbra more than anything. With Terra already locked in, I think you can definitely lean towards this being a jungle pick and hedging your bets, right? Worst case scenario, you ban something like a Pele here, and you're probably just fine, not too worried about it. I think that the control right now that the Bolts have is that they have that flexibility in themselves, but also the fact that they haven't picked up a Hunter, which I wouldn't be surprised if well, they could probably save Bera's pick if they really wanted to. And realistically, if this Achilles is going to go to Haddix, that gives you a lot of flexibility to swing something away for Lasbra, or it gives you a little more time to figure out what you're going to pick to go into lane against this Cthulhu.
I still can't believe I'm saying this, but set is open if Cyclone decides he wants to run that over in the Hunter role on that long lane. But with a pickup here, you got your mid laner, you've got what you would probably imagine to be your support in this Terra. Jake's played the first 2 games, would not be surprised to see him run it back here in the third, and then you have Achilles. Some of that flex between the jungle and that solo lane. So going instead with a little bit more of a safety pick, maybe kind of making them kind of figure out exactly where this Achilles might be going, or maybe waiting to use that as kind of the counter placement via Hachiman. Picked up by the Bolts, giving something over to Barracuda, give him something a little bit safe, give him some decent distance, some escapability to try and get away from this Cthulhu. I didn't want to mention it because it was being hovered, and I had every right in my mind to believe that that was not going to get locked in. Thankfully, it does not. It is Morgan Le Fay going over to the Tartarus Titans.
And it makes sense, right? You get something that is safe in mid lane, does a decent amount of damage, and admittedly meshes pretty well with your composition. I think the Titans, especially now that they've locked in the Charybdis, and Charybdis admittedly had a little bit more, I don't even want to say zone, because I can't think of who's going to give more zone than a Cthulhu. Just comfort, I guess, in the last couple of comps with the healing. We'll have to see if the slow roll build that Cyclone has gone is going to pay off the same way here.
This is a pick that Lasbra likes, and something that in the past he's been active on early and often.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go full profit on this one. That's with a PH, not an F. I think we see Lasbra go for a very early gank in the duo lane where he tries to shut down either Cyclone Spin, more likely Aurora as the target. Aurora, 50-50 chance of whether or not he falls, and then we're going to see it slow down a lot from Lasbra after that. I think more so, you want to see Layers get more involved. This Camazotz is a pick that has some great targets on the other side. Tiamat in the early, very easy to shut down. Barracuda, pre-5, pretty easy to shut down for this pick as well. I'm keeping my eyes on both these junglers.
Where do we land now on data points for Cyclone Spin on Charybdis? Because
that god's good.
We've gotten 2 wins, and 2 good-looking wins at that for Cyclone Spin on this pick.
Thorn Hammer in the first slot, so additional survivability from just raw HP and fusion, but more so important is that damage output that he's now got. If anyone rotates into his lane, maybe he doesn't put that whole lot of threat onto Benji directly, but Layers has to think a little bit harder if he wants to get involved on this side of the map, as Lasbra makes his second rotation over.
Benji uses the beads, has Descent into Madness, but Lasbra's thrown his ultimate out at Benji. Execute threshold reached by Benji, but look at all the damage from Layers. It's all connected onto Lasbra on the counter gank, and Layers still has Bat Out of Hell if there's a chase to be had. There is not. And the counter gank is perfect, and Camazotz continuing to be a threat here today.
Unfortunate timing for Lasbra and Haddix. That execute threshold just came like 0.5 seconds too late. Haddix did not want to have to dedicate himself to ulting into the tower as Ven tries to get some of this farm back and slow Layers down. Maybe
something a little bit more. Layers does still have Bat Out of Hell, which kills down a lot of that kill pressure. Aurora well timed on his ultimate. Double stun from Cyclone Spin. He has flipped this fight around. And now the Tartarus Titans can re-engage on the back end of this fight. Barracuda drops down the banner, doesn't connect as Cyclone Spin is disengaged. But Aurora immediately flips things around with the perfect timing of his ultimate to avoid the stun. And then Cyclone Spin rotates through and shows us exactly what the Charybdis ultimate can do outside of just defensive CC immunity. Yeah, there was some deep ward coverage there on the Titan side of the jungle. That'll keep Barracuda and Awesome Jake privy to the fact that Layers has made his way left. And it looks like, Myth, we might need to buckle in. We might be dancing around these neutral objectives one more time here in Game 3.
Maybe. It seems like both these teams kind of more so okay with a slower pace. The Tartarus Titans, yet again, do have some sustained advantage in the team fight as Benji starts to move himself forward. Layers, though, it's a blink in. He wants Laz.
And Layers is 2 levels up over Lasbra here. Lasbra's sent his ultimate Layers his way. Haddix body blocked on through as best as the Tartarus Titans can. Ultimate used defensively by Haddix. And an immediate answer from Layers in the Bat Out of Hell to try to read that one out. Benji uses his ult as well. So it's a 2-for-2 ult trade over on the right side of the map, but this time the Bolts able to survive. How about the left though? Awesome Jake, he's low, lurking in the waters. That's not the right god, but it's the right mindset from Cyclone Spin here. Barracuda sends some damage Aurora's way as the pull will not connect. And all right, we're scrapping a little bit more here in Game 3. But no kills on the board outside of the first blood.
Man, that meditation from Jake is getting so much mileage. Every time he pops it, the Tartarus Titans say, we're not fighting into that. I don't care. I'm not taking that engagement, and immediately start to walk themselves out. Seems like the Olympus Bolts have essentially given up on shutting down Cyclone Spin specifically, so the last couple of times they've engaged the fight has been directly onto Aurora. But that is a double ultimate trade from the Olympus Bolts, Earthen Fury, and the ultimate from Barracuda, just for Auroras.
Paul forced into the beads, then sent some damage Lasbra's way. Walls come together, and Paul will survive, but not for much longer. Lasbra deals the final bit of damage there. Awesome Jake, that being said, will live on the other end of this fight. Cyclone Spin, can you get a big stun? No, you can't. The Olympus Bolts group up. They send some pressure left, and both of the carries down for the Titans.
Yeah, Jake had like 9 more HP than he needed. Is able to survive that engagement. Cyclone Spin thinks maybe for a moment he can utilize his movement speed to get in there aggressively, but steps a little too far forward. These death timers are starting to get a little bit longer. That said, take a peek at some of these XP gaps. Ven, still 2 levels, but it's actually Layers with a 2-level lead on this Camazotz on the other side, kind of closing up that XP. Cyclone Spin does as well, drops that 2-level gap for Barracuda down to 1.
That's right, but still pressure for Barracuda on this purple buff. Cyclone Spin avoids the setback. Barracuda with his ult. Might as well call it an execute, but the rest of the fight happening over by the Gold Fury. That's where Layers has grabbed the first kill of the fight. Onto Venenu, the perfect target, a double kill for the Camazotz. And the 2-level lead matters not if Venenu is dead. And that's the mindset Layers brought into that team fight. Now 2 down for the Olympus Bolts, only 1 gone for the Tartarus Titans. And outside of Barracuda making something happen, Barracuda's on the wrong side of the jungle here. He walks in towards the Gold Fury. Paul separating things out. Barracuda uses the beads. Gold Fury not reset here. Big knockup onto Haddix. Goodbye, Barracuda. Haddix finds the stun on the other end of this fight, but the Tartarus Titans will walk their way in, forces the ult out of Haddix, and the Gold Fury still awaits.
The Bolts have got to know when to hold them and when to fold them, and they refuse to fold this time around. Gold Fury pulled out yet again, but it's Lasbra and Haddix who maintain a hover.
We're still holding them. We're not folding them just yet. Haddix maybe sensing the opportunity to steal away this Fury, but nicely delayed out.
What?
Oh my, they steal it away. And it's Lasbra who gets it done, and he will get out scot-free. They were holding pocket aces. Why would you fold on that? No, I'm wrong. It's Haddix who steals it away with the combat dodge. Regardless, it's the Bolts who come up with the objective.
In their favor. It's still incredibly thin margins. I'm calling this a dead even game.
You know what's wild, Myth? This just got buffed. And that's the last bit of damage that Haddix was able to do there. Was behind the Tartarus Titans a moment ago. Where does the number advantage lie then for the Tartarus Titans? Because it's clearly not going to be here on left. Cyclone Spin does a whole lot of damage. And Awesome Jake learns that the hard way. Pyromancer will go quietly unless Venenu...
He can't do it again.
Sends it there. Haddix is here. Has already stolen away 1 objective this game, but the Tartarus Titans do not want to give him the opportunity to do it again. A full collapse from the Titans onto Haddix, who is down beneath half HP. Some extra shielding from the Bulwark of Hope keeps him on the map a little bit longer. And if nothing else, the Bolts have kept the Pyromancer where it is.
Layers very low mana now. Can't stick around in these fights too much longer. Lasbra, though, he can. He's fresh in the engagement.
And Aurora is taken down, all set up by Lasbra. But watch out, Benji's on the backside of this fight. And look at the health bars for the Olympus Bolts. This is a great opportunity for the Titans and their carries to make some magic happen. Paul receives the execute, but there's not enough damage. Haddix will get the damage done nonetheless, and Paul falls for the 2nd kill of this fight for the Olympus Bolts. Both mid laners are gone, and Ven, who's got a lead, might feel like the more impactful mid laner to have missing, but still a numbers advantage for the Olympus Bolts around this Pyromancer. Benji, the only one who can change things around, and he will not. Pyromancer to the Bolts.
Cyclone Spin still hovering, so if the Mire is able to lock anybody down, could open up just this, a great opportunity to get aggressive.
Oh, and Cyclone Spin will chase him down. Stun is there as well. Benji dashes further forward, but Haddix is tanky enough to not go down to the re-engage from the Tartarus Titans. That would have maybe salved the wound of losing a kill and that Pyromancer.
Board here. Their jungler has gone for a couple of items in the Maze Tree, Ob Shard for Ven, Barracuda, early dominance and Crusher pickup. And that's all not for just the ability to do damage yourselves, but it's all to set up Haddix on this Achilles. This Benji guy, he's the target. Or maybe it's Aurora.
God, yeah, Aurora's the momentary target. Does not have beads, did have ultimate, but did not have a chance to utilize that. That's an ultimate sent out by Haddix. Benji will dash away. Earthen Fury from Awesome Jake got used. And so a couple ultimates, 3 as a matter of fact, spent onto Aurora. Is that enough of an advantage for the Tartarus Titans to still feel okay taking a fight around the Oni Fury? At least show some face, but it looks like they're going to wait for their support to get back on the map.
They will.
But not horrible to give on up. And so Oni Fury grouped up on by the Tartarus Titans here. Everyone in this game will have their actives ready to go except for Paul, who's 15 seconds away from his beads. And it seems like we've bought enough time for the Tartarus Titans to pull the Oni Fury. It's down to half. This objective burning quickly. We've seen plenty of steals already in this set and already in this game, and Haddix has found the backline. Cyclone Spin stands strong, but into the earth he goes as he kites on backwards. First kill of the fight onto Aurora as Layers uses the bead, still has Bat Out of Hell. And there is a rotation through from the Olympus Bolts. Cyclone Spin blinked on by Lasbra, but Aegis beads, it'll save his life. Stun onto Venenu. Layers picks up the back end kill onto Lasbra. That is all the Titans have to hang their hat on, as Paul will run down Haddix, but the rest of the Bolts will collapse soon.
The Olympus Bolts got the objective in a steal and shut down Aurora immediately. Maybe now the Tartarus Titans can get a little bit more in their favor, but it's Benji on the retreat.
Uses the Mire. What can Layers get done? Not much. With that much HP, it looks like Paul was able to survive, head on back to base. Aurora's back on the respawn. And you mentioned it there, Myth. It is a winning fight as far as kills go for the Olympus Bolts, as well as the Oni Fury secured.
Hopefully the rest of the team can survive the fight on the tail end, and generally that has been how it's gone. But the Olympus Bolts stripping away that objective itself, maybe the largest difference maker in this one. Now 5,000 total gold, favoring the Chaos team. You gotta think they're gonna feel confident stepping up towards the Fire Giant, but instead it's Benji in some trouble.
Benji getting jumped on. The Bolts have dropped the tower, but that has bought time for Paul to rotate over to the solo lane. And a defensive ultimate out of Barracuda does not feel great, especially Myth, exactly what you're just talking about. Although be careful, Layers.
Ooh.
Yeah. Head on out of the shop there, my friend. And so Barracuda won't have his ult. Neither will Jake. Neither will Lasbra. Layers and Paul in the same situation, but Fire Giant started up by the Olympus Bolts. Benji somewhat low here in this jungle skirmish, and it looks like the Bolts have bought enough space.
It's dropping fast. The Fire Giant down to 20%, and who's working their way in? It's Benji first.
Benji from range, but the Fire Giant has been reset. Aurora is all alone, finds a knockup onto only Haddix, but Execute is there, and it is perfect. And Haddix has found the Titan support once again. 0-4 is Aurora on Sylvanas. The Titan support has just not been able to get it done in game number 3, and the Fire Giant will be whittled away, and the Bolts will secure the big one. And the Titans will have to listen to it go down. Big swing in this game. The Bolts were already ahead, but now they can see a game 4.
Aurora dead yet again, but gets his ultimate off first this time. 20 seconds till he respawns. The Olympus Bolts, they may not have the most sustain in their composition, but healing from Fire Giant, the slight healing you get from Terra, is going to keep them around, and they're going to go ahead and try and utilize this time with Aurora dead to push it out. As Lasbra, he may have taken it a little too much here. Layers turns this one around, and that's a huge pick.
Massive solo kill for Layers. That'll strip away one of the Fire Giant buffs, as well as the death timer for 50 seconds onto Lasbra. And that is so much time off the FG buff. Not to mention, not getting much of a push done here on right. And this is smart from Cyclone Spin. We've got a 4v4 advantage on the right. Let's see what I can get done onto this tier 2 tower. And Charybdis is going to do a good job shredding that away. Good stun from Awesome Jake, though. You wish you had Cyclone Spin in this fight. That being said, because you've lost Paul, you've lost Aurora. And Cyclone Spin's got to go back so you don't lose the game.
He hasn't decided to go back yet. He's trusting his team to hold the base with the Olympus Bolts. They don't trust the Tartarus Titans to do the same.
Execute!
Great block!
By Layers, and Layers makes a big play. Cyclone Spin gets the left side Phoenix all on his own here. Will he go back to base? You have to. Your Titan, it's under pressure. Layers and Benji, they don't have enough leg to get this one done all on their own. Cyclone Spin back into
here.
Base. Finds a double stun onto the Titan. Layers is the first. Venenu run down by Layers on the other side as the Titans 10% HP. 2 are already gone. The Titans balancing on a tightrope, but it is wide enough for them to stay afloat. The Titans repel the Olympus Bolts.
Mechanical excellence is what separates the Titans from a loss and a survivable game here. The blink forward from Layers to block the execute is huge.
Venenu's gone back in. Cyclone Spin still alive on the right-hand side of this fight, but Venenu will run down Benji. Now under the earth once again is Cyclone Spin. The auto attack separating him from another kill, but Layers, he's the one unstoppable. Say his name. The Camazot's going big. And the Titans will live on. Their Titan will live on with just under half HP.
Phoenix for Phoenix trade, left for right. Who got the higher priority? It's the Tartarus Titans. What a massive engagement on the tail end of this one. Yeah, watch this. What a phenomenal block. Benji, you better pay a check out to Layers because he is keeping you in it.
That's game, right? I mean, if the ult
It would've
connects onto Benji, if the execute is there, that's got to be game
That's
over.
crazy.
And look, Cyclone Spin just now gets back to base while the Titan is already at half HP. That double stun connects onto some fantastic targets there. It took a little while, but the Charybdis has finally shown up here in this game. And you get maybe the most important Phoenix going into the next Fire Giant fight. 2 minutes away. Lasber's already won a 1v1 earlier in this game. He'll get another one here onto Paul, and the brakes have been hit. The Titans, they felt a bit of momentum, but that is massive as Lasber gets a pick on the mid lane.
And now once Paul shows himself on this right-hand side, that's the go button for the Olympus Bolts. Watch them. They've stepped forward. They're going for the engage.
Yeah, there is an engage here on left. It's Cyclone Spin who has to mitigate it, but Haddix has been left alone here. He will use the beat on the back end of a good re-engage from the Tartarus Titans, and Paul has pushed out one wave. He's joined the rest of his team here on the left side of the map. There's no Fire Giant here. There's no Fire Giant buff. The Fire Giant back and respawning, but Paul only pushed out one wave. The Fire Giant minions, or the Fire minions rather, will make their way back down right here shortly.
One more wave keeps that wave at bay rather, of the Olympus Bolts. So this time it's Layers making the rotation over. He's got better 1v1 odds against Lasbra. Better him than Paul, but now that he's shown himself,
Cyclone stun. He's got to use both actors, but Haddix is there, and that is easy work for the Achilles. Nice double knockup from Benji, though. Paul is still in the mid lane, and Lasbra deals the last bit of damage there. We are barreling towards a game 4. The Titans, they tried desperately to stay alive in this game. They defended their Titan, but I doubt they will be able to do so yet again. It is still crippled, and the Olympus Bolts will send us to a game 4.
Benji may have been full HP, but he's the only one, and he does not keep the Titan alive yet again. Sometimes miracle plays go unrewarded.
Back and forth early game, Bolts still kind of hold control up until the very end, and then when it just comes down to these late game team fights, and Cyclone Spin, I will give him credit. He's made some phenomenal plays on this Charybdis throughout the 3 games that he's played. The double stun to save a roar earlier on in the game was just outright sick. I'm just going to leave it at that. But overall, the veteranship here of the Bolts coming together. Lasbra on this Circuit getting so many individual picks against Paul, against Layers, really allowing them to escalate further. And even though we had the miracle play out of Layers, the super play coming out of Cyclone Spin by pushing that left Phoenix coming back and helping to stop that, it's just not enough to kill the momentum of the Olympus Bolts here in the 3rd game.
Yeah, that's really what it is, right? The Bolts, if they are in the same position but with less of a lead and less control, then they probably don't win this game. I think they were able to control a majority of the game, and rightly so. You had highlighted it, but like Lasbra is all over the place with this Circuit, feels really comfortable. The Achilles gets to go in and have a little bit of the performance he would really like. 6-0-3 for Haddix, so he was very happy with what he was able to accomplish. You get some good shots out of Barra as well. It's a really, really dynamic game for the Bolts, but if they come into that even slightly more even with that trade around the right Phoenix where they pick that up and Cyclone gets the left Phoenix, then there's a defense that comes through. I think we get to see the Titans start to run the show from that point forward. But because they already had a nice cushion ahead of them,
the player you do have to look towards here as we jump into picks and bans for game number 4 of the best of 5 set. Yeah, you're tuning in. You still have more to go. The 2-1 doesn't mean the set's over for the Titans. Oh no, we still have potentially 2 more games to go. Every single set from here on out for Phase 3 will be best of 5s between our top teams out here in these group stages. It's going to be very important. Every single one of them. But now that the Bolts have gotten that game back, they've gotten a little bit more momentum towards themselves. They were really struggling to kind of keep ahead of the Titans. Game number 2, game number 3 this time around, they're able to maintain that lead and then be able to finally punch back. But they're going to double down on making sure to ban out Paul here, the Hell and the Aphrodite again here in game 4 taken out.
So here's where things get a little weird. And this is just like, I like keeping track of weird things.
Well, of course.
Set number 1. It is only the first pick team that won. Each time, so when the Kings swapped over and were first pick, they won. And every other time, it was the Leviathan's first pick, they won.
It's only second.
This set, it has been only the second pick. So the Bolts, by that metric, have to win this, push us to a game 5, and then it's whichever team, I guess the Titans get to choose that case, would then take second pick. That would change everything.
a little bit of a shakeup here. A Nike banned away by the Bolts, same thing that we had in the last set, but this time the Titans, instead of banning the Morrigan like they have been in this third slot, they ban the Cthulhu and pick up the Morrigan to make sure to get Paul an early god, a god right up his wheelhouse, a god that he, well, ran a world championship with in the year before, but a god that's also been banned away across the board by just about every single team against every possible opposition. Nobody has been wanting to let this mid lane god through. In fact, I think as of recent, we've been seeing more Morrigan banned than even like Tiamat and Raijin. She's been not let through by basically everybody.
She is a force to be reckoned with in the right hands, and you'll never guess it, but Paul's hands are the right hands for this god. So much so that I think even though Benji can perform really well on this Cthulhu, we just got to see that, there's still a lot behind it that has to go correct for the team to be able to find a lot of success. You can have a great Cthulhu ult, but if the other team, in this case the Bolts, are able to handle it, it doesn't mean as much. If you're able to control it, if you have a Circuit, you have the Achilles, the damage that they had, as well as the itemization, I guess actually godization that they did to make sure that they couldn't run that as successfully as they wanted really helped out. The Morrigan's a lot more difficult to deal with. I mean, in this case, you've got two front lanes that you lock in alongside it. Then either you get a third or you get someone else, a good damage dealer. Camazotz is a very popular target for a Morrigan, especially if Lasbra ends up having a good game. That means that Paul's going to be able to transform into that and have a double assassin comp.
Along with this Morrigan by the Titans, they get RTO and Geb. Geb was left open last game completely, just full stop. Somehow Geb made it all the way through. Neither team picked nor banned him. And here in game number 4, we're finally getting to see this god come back out. And maybe we'll see a little bit of why this god has been banned away. A 71% win rate on this Guardian ever since his re-rise back here in phase number 3 after his recent buffs. On the other side of the board is the Terra, Camazotz, and the Tiamat locked in for the Bolt. So we are starting to see Tiamat kind of make her way back in. We saw her kind of go away for a few games. A few teams have kind of been like, yeah, Tiamat's not really that huge of a priority. Maybe we pick it up. Maybe we just kind of let it fall by the wayside. But the Bolts are going to make sure to get something for Venenu here in that mid lane, locking that in. Bans come through. Set, which I'm baffled made it this many games without even being looked at by a single team. And then Erlong Shen, and on the opposite side of the board, the Yola Run, who is a 100% pick ban rate today, if I'm not mistaken now. And then the Hachiman as the second Hunter banned away by the Titans.
I'll be honest, the biggest surprise for me here is that the Bolts are saving Bera's pick for last. I guess it's mainly to see what Cyclone's going to run, because Cyclone's nuts. He'll play anything he wants over there.
Doing 4 in a row is the question.
I mean, it's, good win rate. She's been doing successful for the Charybdis, so it wouldn't be too far-fetched to think of. But it depends, with everything around you. You've got Morgan, who can carry a game. You've got Loki now, who I think can carry a game. And so I think it opens up a open conversation for him to play something that maybe fits his play style and, more to the point, what the Titans were trying to do last game a little bit better.
Well, there's something a little bit better than a 70% win rate. Now, only with 5 games. Chernobog locked in, 100% win rate on this Hunter. Cyclone Spin wanting to continue this out. And now this opens up the Bolts for their Hunter pick. What are they going to get for Barracuda? We've seen a lot of stranger picks sometimes come out. Things like Scotty has popped out of his wheelhouse a couple of times, but a lot of gods still open. Izanami, namely. Heimdall, that's the one I was thinking.
Yeah.
Heimdall is still up, who's been one. Even Rom, who's been quietly absent from a lot of these games.
And it's this, bizarre area. Again, he falls into that. He's still not terrible, right? We actually saw a lot of him, despite the meta changes, specifically with like the Jotun Wrath coming up and everything. It really started to slow things down for
I
Rom.
apologize. Dolson Myth and Doug. I'll say Doug 2 more times. Now only 1 more time. Doug once again with us. Now that's all 4 shout-outs.
Doug.
For this. All right. Doug deserves every extra ounce of love.
You didn't look happy about that.
Well, you cut me off, rude, those sorts of things. No, I love giving Doug his due credit, who's followed along with the action in all 3 games so far. Will do so here in Game 4. And if needed, if the Bolts have their way, game number 5, another look at a different god in the mid lane for Paul. That's now being ganked by Lasbra. Layers blinks on through. Laz doesn't have the damage, but neither do Paul and Layers. And Lasbra will survive. Venno still at level 1. And that feels tough over here in the mid lane. A roar low after the skirmish we had on left as well. And it looks like Layers now has the ability to chase down Laz, make life difficult.
I wonder, a couple of things could have gone different there to net the Tartarus Titans' first blood. Had Layers leveled up Stealth instead of his second ability, maybe able to close gap on a Lasbra and finish off that kill, or even considering he levels his second ability, What if he just waits till Dark Omen is used already by Paul and procs it by dropping the poison just in the middle of the team fight? Maybe could have also finished off that kill. Some small micro misplays. Loses out on some of the potential gold of a first blood, but at least pressure still going the way of the Tartarus Titans here, who are able to control the neutral farm as well as you said, just be annoying. Make sure that Lazarus is struggling to farm.
Roar will get stunned up here, but Barracuda's just going to send some poke his way. So now for the first time this set, Miff, Cyclone Spin off of Charybdis onto Chernobog. Barracuda sticks with the Charybdis play here and is getting some early pressure here in this game alongside Awesome Jake, who's been on Terra, I think, in every game this set, unless my brain is just escaping me. It's been a lot.
It has been a lot.
Is all I have to say about that. Cyclone Spin stunned up and still plenty of pressure put out, but returned in spades by the Tartarus Titans. Jake dashes forward. I'm not going to get a word in edgewise here if Jake keeps playing the way that he is. Some pressure connects onto the dual lane of the Tartarus Titans. That means purple buff invade eyed, but Lasbra has eyes for the red buff for the time being, and it gets dropped down. And Lasbra will make his way right on out. The Roar and Cyclone Spin still doing it out here with Awesome Jake. But Terra, I want to finally get back to it after all the fighting we've done.
Awesome Jake has done his job relatively well on the Terra. Hasn't been the most loud performances, hasn't really wowed too much. A couple of his Earthen Furies have been just straight up phenomenal, but this is what you pick it for.
Oh,
wow!
Man, is that first blood? Jake says yes! And the Olympus Bolts combine all their pressure, and they pour it into Cyclone Spin, who takes a tumble 3 minutes into this game. Right on cue for you there, Miff.
That's Caster's Curse.
That's right. That's right. Little Caster's Curse there, and the Olympus Bolts will pick up first blood and get some pressure rolling here on the left side of the map.
So there you go. He's gotten a couple of games to warm up and now starting to hit his stride. Has not even been forced to use the meditation as of yet, and that's the conversation I was hoping to have. Seems like he's very happy to take the standard build that he's been going for all set so far. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a Crusher in that first slot.
Will Barracuda and Jake steal away this purple? They will try, but Layers is here. Layers has Assassinate. Lasbra just a bit behind Layers. Blink in, Cataclysm from Aurora, and Awesome Jake steals away the purple, but will he pay for it with his life? Barracuda no good on the stun. Awesome Jake brought right back into the backline by his own doing. Barracuda chased down on the left here. Layers still lurking. And we will disengage, and Awesome Jake takes the purple and gets out with his life.
Meditation is just nuts, man. I mean, every time I think Jake has gone a little too far, stepped a little too far out of line, not the case. Pops that relic, and now it's Paul who finds himself on the receiving end. The Olympus Bolts have woken up, and they've brought the beast early. 5.5 minutes into the game, second kill on the board, and it's gold lead. I am going to say
absolutes,
whoever wins. Yeah, I'm going to speak in absolutes. Whoever wins this set is guaranteed moving through their group. I don't think there's any world where you win this set and you still get eliminated.
Right.
That is how important
it's hard to imagine
this one is. This essentially guarantees you going forward.
It is hard to imagine that being the case. The Titans have gotten off to a great start. Momentum slips a bit to the Olympus Bolts in Game 3. And some good pressure brought to the right side of the map. That is something we have not seen a lot of. As up into the air goes Cyclone Spin. Where does he head? Solo lane. That's under the Tier 1 tower, but no real pressure. But what that does do, Miff, allows Barracuda and Jake to push down the Tier 1 and left. And it's a delayed payoff from the ultimate, maybe, as everyone from the Titans ends up on right. And Haddix goes down for the first kill of the game to the Tartarus Titans, and there will not be a Tier 1 for the Olympus Bolts. Instead, looks like a quick rotation on over to the Gold Fury. Kill plus tower ends up being the payoff for the Titans on right.
But the Olympus Bolts, with so many members on the right-hand side of the map, are able to go towards the neutral objective. An early Gold Fury 10 minutes into this one, and no opposition from the Tartarus Titans will go their way. That was an opportunistic play from the Titans. They said, okay, we're here. Seemed like Cyclone Spin wanted to go back to base immediately. He's like, well, the squad's here. We might as well go for a little bit of a dive. If he so chooses, can just sit at his Tier 2 and force Benji into such a poor position.
And this is just simple for Tartarus Titans. It's a good reaction on the ultimate by Haddix to avoid the stun, but what did it really matter by the end of the day? There was just way too much damage, way too many people over on the right side of the map.
And just a moment ago, it was a 2-level lead for Barracuda in the lane over Cyclone Spin. Cyclone was sitting at 8, Barracuda at 10, so that rotation for Cyclone comes up massive to close up some of that gap and maybe gives them the potential to take that 1v1 in lane.
We've not seen all that much right side presence early in the game so far this set, but we have seen it now a couple of times in back-to-back fights. That's a 3-man Cataclysm from Aurora, and it's an ult back in from Cyclone Spin as well.
Wow.
And everything coming up blue. The Tartarus Titans, they rotate in force, and Layers is on a killing spree. 2 more kills now for this Loki.
What?
Could be a third. Haddix is stuck around. A triple kill for Layers. The Loki running wild in the early game.
Cyclone Spin is unconcerned with Barracuda. He says, this lane, dead to me. I don't care. John Salter, who? I'm going to the right lane, and Haddix is the target. And unfortunately for the Bolts, there were 4 other dudes there that fall down. Tier 2 tower at the 12.5-minute mark, and the Tartarus Titans have extended their lead to 1,000. Really have started to go down in this set with that lead.
Yeah, we're kicking it for 5 minutes until these objectives start getting fought over. Unless Aurora and Layers have something to say about this one. Primal Fury down low, knockup from Aurora, no good on the Lasbra. Primal Fury, soft reset, but immediately picked up by the Tartarus Titans. Benji around the back, ult from Barracuda. Will not secure the objective. Cyclone Spin up and down out of his ultimate. Big stun as Jake will dash away, but he ends up getting taken down. It's a rampage for Layers, who's got another kill in this fight. Might be a double on the other end if Lasbra is unable to survive, but the Bat Out of Hell will keep the Kamazots barely on the map. He's got to have single-digit HP there, and Layers gets it done yet again. The Olympus Bolts fighting in 4v5 to this Primal.
Haddix trying to relive his glory from the last one. Might be able to throw up a steal, but the Tartarus Titans learn their lesson, reset the objective, and take the fight.
Aurora gets stunned. Haddix will not go back in with his execute. Barracuda evaporates. Venenu uses his beads and will waltz on away, but Benji will chase him down. This RDO so difficult to deal with. 0-0-6, 2 levels ahead of Haddix, and Benji has not been slowed down, and now we will go back to the Primal. The Titans make no mistake.
Do you remember the conversation we had about the Morrigan into Charybdis matchup just a moment ago?
If I remember every conversation we've ever had.
Good Lord, man. Doesn't matter how survivable you are. If you die before you know your enemy is there, Barracuda does get the beads off, but just in time to go to the grayscale screen without his relics. And you're not ahead.
I know, I'm behind. Gotta stop before I get further behind. But an immediate pivot. This is quick. All the Titans were on the left just a moment ago, and now they're on right. Now they're on Fire Giant. In the Olympus Bolts, you might have to answer, but you're so far behind that if you lose this fight handily, the game might as well just be over. The set might as well just be over.
Gross. Gross.
Oh my God! Paul says goodbye to the Olympus Bolts jungler, and before we can react to it,
great
ult.
ult.
4 versus 5. Aurora on the re-engage, double stun under the Tartarus Titans.
Where you at,
Venenu left running. Barracuda left running. Reeling are the Olympus Bolts. Layers has got his 6th of the game. 7th is around the corner. Awesome Jake will fall to Paul, who is on a killing spree, and the Titans will not be denied.
It seems like they're going for the end of the game. 20 seconds left on Lazarus respawn, and let's break down Lazarus' fight, by the way. Leaps over the stealth engage from Layers and leaps into the stealth of Paul. Double invisible. That's so annoying.
Haddix has got 8 seconds left on his own. Lasberg will be up in 5. And
They can't.
Like
No way.
This is taking long enough. Yeah, if the Phoenix is taking that long, I don't think we're ending the game. And so Haddix and the Bolts will live just a little bit longer. But if the fights go anything like that, the Bolts maybe rather would the game just ended there. I mean, you're talking about
Mercy
a massive
kill?
turnaround. Right, guys, please walk on into our base. Yeah, Paul has Rod of Tahuti. And so if the low health targets weren't dying quick enough for you there, Myth, they will be dying a little bit quicker now as the big power spike rolls on through for this Morrigan. And if you're starting off a fight, deleting a priority target, Benji,
Probably winning that fight.
Right, you're probably winning that fight. I was holding to see if Benji would attempt to steal. He will not. Behind both stealth targets are going to be doing this. Cover your eyes, because this is gross.
Yeah, watch this. Layers moving forward with stealth behind him. Blinks in. Lazarus says, all right, see ya, and lands immediately into his death. That is, I mean, what's the counter? He could have jumped the other direction, I suppose, but he's probably dead to the assassinate. Maybe if he leaped and immediately channeled the ultimate, but he leaps into a stun.
Here's what
That's
you do.
tough, man.
If you're Lasbra, the moment you get nervous, you press Bat Out of Hell, just assuming that somebody is close by.
If you can't see him.
That's right, you can't see him. They must be here. Paul, though, taken low this time. He's transformed into the Camazotz. Unstoppable is Layers. Barracuda not safe enough on the Charybdis. He falls to 0-3. Paul uses his Aegis. Lasbra waits it out. That's an important trade back.
Wait, that's
Haddix
huge.
gets another. The Olympus Bolts, they are not out of this game. Not just yet. They've gotten a 2-for-1 trade. The best in a long time for the Bolts around the Fire Giant.
Cyclone forces the ultimate out from Haddix here, maybe just repositioning to try and close gap onto Benji with the rest of his team. Now it's a solid disengage from the Tartarus Titans with Jake kind of leading the charge forward, but the Olympus Bolts, they're still playing from behind. I don't think they can go towards the Fire Giant, maybe a tier 2?
A stun onto Haddix. And this is an awkward moment, right? You'd love to be able to leverage this one-man advantage, but it's Barracuda who's dead, so you don't have great Fire Giant. You're missing a big piece of your Fire Giant
We're in
burn.
a position to make a proactive play. The Olympus Bolts, I'd say 2, maybe 3. That's a lot.
Right, it's a few with the way that this game has gone. At least XP matters a little less here, as both supports pretty close, level 20 for everyone else outside of Haddix. But gold to upgrade those starter items becomes an important topic of conversation. We might not get there. Fire Giant low here. Cyclone Spin and Layers doing it all on their own. Double Cataclysm from Aurora, and it is perfect. Awesome Jake melting quickly
See ya.
as if he were not a tank. Haddix, he will suffer a similar fate, but he gets out of range. Now Barracuda chased down by Paul in the bat out of hell. He's already used his Aegis, and he will stand no further. The Tartarus Titans have gotten another 2 on this fight. The Olympus Bolts still have 3 alive, but will it last any longer? Paul, menacing, lurks forward, will not hit the stun. But the Titans got what they came for with 2 kills.
They don't stick around for the Phoenix. With Polynomicon, you got to think Paul hits the Phoenix twice and it just falls down, but they're not concerned. That Phoenix is going to be permanently hobbled for the rest of this game, so instead, go for the less guaranteed objective, the Fire Giant. And it is going to be a steal attempt for the Olympus Bolts. Lasbra moving up, Haddix as well, even Ven, 3 versus 5.
Laz has his ult. He has bat out of hell. Is that the secure? Oh,
What?
They dropped it!
What are you doing?
I didn't know he was there! Lasbra blinks in, steals it away, but you have to survive. If you're Haddix, if you're Ven, if you're Jake, you need to stay on the map. The Tartarus Titans, underneath their noses, get the Fire Giant taken away. It's a big play by Lasbra. But what do you lose? It is all 5 members of the Titans. Barracuda is up in 1.
Right side, Phoenix is a great start for the Tartarus Titans. I can't believe that, Dave.
They left
They
it.
just
They left it.
The conversation. You confirmed it, right? No, I didn't confirm it. I turned around to take the fight. They left it at like 300 HP, and Lazarus never had an easier steal of his life. That is actually nuts. That show it to us, production. Run the clip. Watch this.
All right, I wondered if he walked in undetected.
Bro, what is this?
They
They all
leave.
turned around. Where are you going, Layers? That is crazy.
And you know how crazy that is? How wild that is? You and I got closer to standing up and dancing in that moment than we were minutes ago when I was talking about it. We both jump out of our chairs.
That is nuts.
Unreal. And that's all it takes. That is all it takes. Garrett on stick. See if we can get the Bolts to chase him. And then bait and switch. Now the Titans start to group up over by this Fire Giant. It's an ult in from Cyclone Spin. Little damage connects onto Haddix. But that kind of shows your hand. Now the Titans and the Bolts really know that the Titans are on the enhanced Fire Giant. Paul stealthed behind the Fire Giant wall. That is plenty of damage onto Haddix, who will not be able to play. Haddix not allowed to take part in what could be the final fight of this game, the final fight of this set. 10-0 is Layers on this Loki. It's a soft reset, and the Bolts still have a chance.
Watch Lasbra, who's working his way around the edge of this team fight. Paul playing on the
This is
opposite
too fast.
ends.
It's too fast.
It is. Tartarus Titans Fire Giant.
Oh no, and Awesome Jake has been left alone now. Benji will slow him down. Is this the way that this game ends? The front line dies alone of the Olympus Bolts. Venenu leaps on over back into his base. Laz, Ven, and Barra will have to keep this game alive. Barracuda jumped on, returned some good damage back.
He does, but loses out on 50% of his HP bar and his defensive relic. Left side, Phoenix been pushed up by that Oni minion wave, is going to be joined by Layers now. Given any opportunity, should be able to take this one out. Does not like his odds in the 1v1 up against Ven. Why leave it up to Risk in a 5 versus 3 situation instead? Maybe rejoins his team in the middle.
Haddix is 10 seconds away. You've got your damage. You need some front line. Left side Phoenix gone.
Oh, he's
Mid-lane
done.
Phoenix gone. Venenu all but gone. Aegis will wear out. And immortal is Layers. Game 4. Layers took it into his own hands, and the Titans able to stay alive. That is a massive stun from Haddix, but there is no damage on the other end. All of it finds its way onto the Titans, and the Titans will take us home in game
Also
4.
just kind of nuts, that game. I think there's a lot, again, it's really difficult when you see something like this to not talk about everything that's happening around the player getting all the kills, because that's really formulated to what helps them get a lot of that. But also layers, like, I mean, there were just so many good moments from this, whether it's peel from the rest of the team, whether it's good rotations from Cyclone. It really does come down to the fact that his damage numbers were up there, the kills really paid off for it. It was just a good showing.
I think you could have just full stop to that. Layers is kind of good. You probably could have just thrown like kind of out of there and just said Layers is good. This is second game in a row now. He went, I believe he went undying in this game if I'm not mistaken. Went 8-0-2 last time, put up 10+ kills on this Loki here in this final game. It's a player who kind of came onto this team and really kind of turned things around for them, and well, he's doing the same thing here. Gets a nice little win over the Bolts to help escalate his team further in the group stages. And Group B is the one that, you know, we talk a lot about as to just how tight-knit this race in Group B is. So getting a win over the other top seed is one of the most important wins that you can get in this group.
Yeah, this is a huge deal for the Titans, because that is one that, you know, you're in here with what, the Scarabs and the Warriors, right? And expectedly, from what the Titans' history has been, you are now in maybe the best position you could be to come out on top in this group because you get this win. I think that they are going to be able to be a lot more comfortable throughout the rest of this, whereas the Bolts are going to have to buckle down and make sure that they don't even slip up slightly to make sure things stay the same. You want your plus-minus to be good just in the event of any tiebreakers, because that happened in, what was it, Phase 1 when the Kings get knocked out of playoff contention. So I think if you're the Bolts here, you're sweating a little bit. If the Titans, you're still focused for the next couple of sets, but you're nowhere near, I think, as stressed out as you could have been coming into today.
So I'm looking at the damage mitigated, which is a stat I don't look at too often, but I think it's always an important one here. 58,000 player damage mitigated by Benji. 27,000 out of Aurora, which you look back and you go, only 27,000? I'm sorry. Our day's pretty much over, but don't worry. We still have more SMITE action to come. All best of fives the remainder of this weekend and all of next week. Tomorrow, we're going to kick things off with the Jade Dragons and the Valhalla Valkyries is our first set, and then the Solar Scarabs and the Oni Warriors. So we are taking a set from each Group A and Group B. And then on Sunday, same thing. Group A's matchup will be the Atlantis Leviathans and the Jade Dragons. Group B, the Olympus Bolts and the Solar Scarabs. Gormizer, though, I do have unfortunate news. For those who didn't watch the waiting room, I'm 0 for 2 today. I'm 0 for 2 on my predictions, and I'm getting really close to that 50%. So if you ever want to go with the prediction, don't go with mine. Let's take a look at the groups, though. Atlantis Leviathans at the top, Tartarus Titans, same thing. Though it is only the first game, so these will change as the weekend goes through, and you'll start seeing some more disparities amongst them and a couple of potential ties later down the road. But great games to really start off. I mean, what better sets to ask for to start off our group stages than with these two sets?
Yeah, and I'm honestly really excited for the rest of the week as well. I think that Scarabs Warriors, like, it's one that, depending on how you